Hello and good morning, everyone. This is Bogdan Cudzilo from TriStar. At today, in this webinar, PDM versus PLM, and what is the difference, and why are companies seeing value using PLM or expanding into PLM versus just PDM. And we're also going to talk about how TriStar can help you with that journey towards PLM. So, as always, before we begin the webinar, this webinar will be recorded for playback at a later time, or if you want to share it with others who may have missed it today. Before I begin the webinar, I'll just let people some time to jump on and log in, and we'll start here in about a minute. I wanted to also point out TriStar's website. Have a look at the resources that we have for prior webinars that go into more details of PLM and PDM, just to get knowledge of what TriStar offers and also understand the software and the services we provide and why we think PTC and Windchill are the best in class for PDM and PLM. So there's also some time-limited offers running. If you are interested, I put on the website link on this page, so feel free to check it out. So what we're going to do today is just go through these topics of, how does PLM build upon a PDM, if you already have a PDM system in place. What should you be looking at when you're considering PDM versus PLM? And just to expand upon these, PDM is the product data management system. So essentially it contains a database and allows you to centralize digital content within it. So it could be CAD files, could be documents, and some workflows that work around those documents for notifications and so on. PLM, product lifecycle management system, is a broader framework that encompasses PDM and builds upon it. So we're going to take a look at how does it do that. What does Windchill specifically contain to enable that? And then we're going to also take a look at what are the benefits of PLM versus just PDM. We're going to take a look at some examples of the value that PLM can bring to companies, and also how we can help you to to be a valuable partner in your journey to PLM. We've worked with customers who have attempted this journey and stalled or failed, and TriStar came in and helped them move along. We have, as we're going to look at, we have a lot of experience in this area, and our main focus is to make sure that a company is successful and they get value out of moving to PLM. If you have any questions around this, feel free to enter these. I'll try to get it to as many as I can towards the end of the webinar. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time for those. So, one of the things for Windchill itself is kind of differentiating. What's a typical PDM? What's a typical PLM? So, if you look at Windchill, a typical PDM contains the ability to manage CAD data, so centralizing it in one location, putting access controls on it so people don't overwrite each other's work, minimizing the amount of duplicates of CAD parts, assemblies in various folders, moving work away from the designer's desktop into a vault so it can be properly backed up, and if that designer is unavailable, other people can access that content, so that engineering IP is not locked up in someone's someone's folder that no one else knows where it is. Typical PDM systems also allow you to do some document management. So if you have other files that are not CAD files, but you want to keep them in the same place for reference purposes, these could be engineering calculations. This could be some customer files that you receive, BOMs in Excel formats, PDFs of requirements, other documents such as step files, IGES files, neutral files that you need to work off of or interface with your customers. Those could be stored in one place. Typical PDMs will give you a very limited amount of BOM management. This is mainly just confined to the engineering BOM, where how it's modeled in CAD is what you get in the BOM structure. Obviously, a BOM that you see in ERP looks nothing like an engineering BOM. It has elements of it, but there's a lot more other things that go into a bill of material for a product than just the engineering data. The typical PDM systems might also contain the ability to visualize that engineering data. In terms of Windchill, every user has access to Creo View, which is the built-in web-based visualization technology, and that can look at 3D models, 2D drawings, additional files if you need to, either through a web browser, through ThingWorx Navigate, or just a custom interface that you can develop for downstream users that need only certain amounts of data. So that's, and also kind of finishing this off is some very limited workflows in the typical PDM, just for notifications, for release, approvals of drawings and parts. When we get to a PLM, now we're kind of adding other functionality that may exist in other systems. So this may exist in ERP systems. This may exist in just point systems, so other software that's only used by that department, or it could be done just manually through electronic files like Excel or Word. We typically find our customers are using mostly Excel to do other things like project management, change management, and so on. So once we kind of start adding PLM functionality into the mix, you now have the ability to manage a lot more of the typical product development processes and data coming from those processes, right? So we can kind of add a lot of these other areas to be able to manage a true BOM, to be able to manage true engineering and enterprise change, to be able to connect to other systems and push or pull data, like ERP, MRP systems, CRM systems even. So here's just an example of some of the functionality that companies will use and centralize in one spot, and this is just going to be explained why in the next few slides. Why do I want to do this in a typical PLM system? Why would I want to bring these processes into into a system like Windchill rather than do it in multiple systems? So we're going to take a look at what would be the typical benefits of a PLM or moving into that type of system. So in most companies, products are getting more complex. Customers are demanding products that are, contain other things that you may have been, putting into your products in the past, and also the ability to get access to their specific product and support, really quickly, and work with a responsive vendor of that product. If the vendor is not responsive, then your customers are going to go somewhere else. Not only does it come down to price, but also how comfortable that customer feels purchasing the product and getting support from you. So when we take a look at products, they may have also multiple configurations. A lot of companies want to design anywhere, manufacture anywhere, just to control costs, just to control supply chain, and even time to market or just-in-time manufacturing. So keeping track of all this data, even in a globalized environment or dispersed environment, is becoming a challenge for a lot of companies. So a PDM would give you the ability to centralize the engineering data, but what about everything else within the company? There's sometimes no connection to any of that. And who interacts with products, right? So typically it kind of starts off with the upfront sales, quoting, and then gets more marketing, and then it gets kind of passed down to engineering. And then other departments during that product development may need access to content that's being developed. Even the dispersed engineering organization with the various departmental stakeholders like quality, manufacturing, sourcing, and so on. So we're going to take a look at how can PLM help with supporting a lot of these different departmental stakeholders. There are many interaction points, many data sources that are then created. So each of these stakeholders typically may have their own database, may have their own work, and when a change comes, and you need to examine that change, respond to the change, and incorporate that change into the product, or provide feedback back to the customer. Their disconnected systems ultimately cause project delays or poor quality or increased risk for meeting deadlines, and even poor reuse of existing data. There may be departments that already have or are aware of this issue, but it may never get back to that product design group in engineering, or it may not get in time to manufacturing, or even procurement. So one of the benefits of PLM is, because you're already creating a digital product definition in PDM or in your design software, is the ability to enable universal data access to that information. And that can happen in one system, but what data is being served? If it's just on a PDM, you're just serving the CAD drawing, the CAD part. That's pretty much it. Maybe a limited view of the BOM. And then everyone starts coming back to engineering asking for more information. So engineering is kind of spending a lot of the time being reactive to requests. And if there could be a self-serve environment, engineering can kind of spend more time on the design process, improving the design, cost optimizations, product improvements, and so on. So at the end of the day, when I'm looking at a complete product, that consists of a bill of material, or what makes up that product, as well as the related information to each of those parts within that bill of material, or even the project itself. So things that may not come from engineering, like the quantities in inventory, or quantities that need on order, or items that are on a change that are being reworked. A lot of that engineering is typically not aware of. They may not need to be aware of it, but to the company itself, that's an important element that impacts deadlines, project schedules, and ultimately being responsive to the customer and to the marketplace. So if we take a look at the typical challenges in engineering, what value would PLM bring to the engineering group? A lot of times engineering is happy with PDM. It gets the job done for them. But a lot of times, a lot of other stakeholders within the company are coming to engineering and asking for things during product development. So for example, the electrical engineers might need information from the mechanical group, and if the electrical group is not in not in the same system, they are essentially requesting that information and waiting for for that collaboration to happen. And if there is a project crunch, people are just not able to get to that, then ultimately delays are caused, and the project itself can suffer. Other departments may need information, like quality may need some information from engineering. The project manager or the program manager will always need to know status or get updates. A lot of time is spent on departmental meetings. So we'll see later on, PLM, if you centralize the data and provide a self-serve environment through things like dashboards, wall charts that are common within companies to update status, you can greatly minimize these occurring meetings that are very costly in everyone's time, just because people need information about a product and they can't get it in any other way other than the formal meeting. So as an example, there have been industry studies that have shown that typically engineers spend about 20 to 30% of their time answering requests for others, providing drawings, providing PDFs, providing models, providing information, taking measurements for people, looking at what is the latest or the version of that model that was sent to that customer. And if you just take an average of, let's say, 25% of an average engineer's time, and based on some standard salary.com calculations, if a company has 30 full-time engineers, if you can eliminate that time, or even half of that time, right, you can allocate that budget to other purposes, all those savings, and there are other improvements that could be a result of those savings. So that's a direct saving based on productivity, but there may be other improvements for reduction in that cost, for offering more products, being able to take on more projects, being more responsive to customers, and so on. For the manufacturing organization, a lot of the challenges are just getting up-to-date information from engineering. Being able for manufacturing to operate in parallel to design instead of always in serial. Typically, the processes we see are, engineering will have to get the design to a certain state for it ready to be released to manufacturing, and then manufacturing starts, kind of taking it over and taking that design into production. And if there's any changes that need to happen, those changes, once it gets into production, are very costly compared to them being caught earlier on in the process. So giving manufacturing visibility earlier on in the process of product design is a great benefit. So if they can access the system and see things that have been pre-approved for manufacturing, you don't need to release the whole BOM. You can just release portions of the BOM if there are some sub-modules or parts that are longer lead time parts, or parts that need to have a longer manufacturing lead time for part preparation, fixture designs, part setup, allocating work centers and resources. A lot of companies are starting to give manufacturing access to drawings in one central spot. So they may, have PDFs on the network somewhere. They may have even them accessing Windchill, and even accessing the 3D models to be able to take measurements, which is great in the PDM system. But other things that a manufacturer may need to do, such as creating work instructions for manufacturing the part, that's typically done outside of the PDM system. Being able to understand what are valid substitute and replacement parts if some of those are not in inventory or they can't order material for those parts. So being able to understand the integration between that BOM in engineering and in ERP with the PLM system, they can get into the system and be able to see the data from multiple systems, not only engineering. So, one example is the example of a change. It's easier and less costly to catch a change in design than once it goes into prototype or even after into production. So, as an example from PTC, Ricoh copiers reported that design phase was only about $35, while prototyping and production costs ballooned greatly. Obviously, material scrap, rework costs, redesigning the molds. If you're outsourcing that has great costs. What would be the value of PLM to the sourcing or procurement department? Typically, whenever I talk to companies, sourcing always wants early visibility into product designs, especially to kind of determine those longer lead items for purchasing. They also don't want to carry a lot of inventory. If they are ordering too many parts and need to ship them back to the vendors, sometimes they're charged penalties for that and incur shipping costs. So how can we minimize that and give sourcing visibility into pre-released content for a design? On the PDM side, they can kind of see the parts, but they don't have visibility into all of the consumables, all of the parts that make up a full bill of material until that design BOM gets pushed into ERP and when it's finished. So that, again, causes delays. They always need step files or part models. And a lot of times engineering is just responding to those requests. And a lot of times those parts are sent by email internally within the company. And again, that could lead to mistakes. So for example, a typical savings in carrying costs for parts, depending obviously how many parts are being managed, if there could be a reduction in the introduction of new parts, and even if engineering needs to see what's already in sourcing, what parts do we already have and we can reuse instead of designing a brand new part, getting engineering visibility into what exists in inventory, what exists in the sourcing system, would be a big benefit to reduce the amount of parts and duplicates that are created within companies. And in terms of project management or management in general, they always need to know project statuses. What are the statuses of deliverables from the engineering department, documents, CAD models, drawings? How does this impact customer delivery dates? What is the impact on the cost of the product, of the BOM, of the internal costs? How can we manage our projects? How can we load balance our and prioritize our internal work and resources on those projects? So if they can have a system and PLM enables them to log in and have things like dashboards on project status, amount of drawings released versus unreleased, the status of work, the status of changes on that product, whether they're customer or supplier changes, and what's impacting and what's holding up that product, and be able to get those metrics that allow them to better estimate and provide information back to their customers. If they can just reduce that amount of time that they wait for information by, for example, 20%, they can, return some of that cost spent on the project and, either increase revenue or be able to handle more projects. And the value to IT, obviously, if you are maintaining multiple systems that do different things for product development, what is the cost of maintaining all of those? What is the cost of integrating those systems together? Some companies developed integrations between their various systems. So they have a lot of support costs for maintaining those integrations. TriStar and PLM, especially in Windchill, allows you to reduce the reliance on maintaining custom integrations. We can handle that for you. We can develop an integration, and if the system needs to be upgraded, we could be responsible for making sure that integration works within, for example, let's say Windchill or ERP. So that kind of reduces the risk to the customer, reduces the the amount of costs involved in maintaining those, as well as the amount of costs involved in the different licenses that they have to maintain, and the different databases and operating systems and database servers that they need to track within the company. So if we kind of take a look at the calculation of how much does that cost versus the number of users and so on, and the number of systems that IT needs to maintain, that could PLM could potentially, centralizing everything in PLM could potentially reduce costs, in hardware, in the number of extra licenses and these system integrations as well. So the other typical benefits of PLM systems in general, and these are industry calculated efficiency improvements. So not only for Windchill, but PLM in general, is for the different value drivers, being able to see improvements in the engineering change side, the enterprise change orders, engineering change notices, being able to respond to those in a quicker manner, being able to decrease meeting times, travel expenses, for getting everyone on the same page, being able to reduce just the general and administrative costs for IT support, data proliferation, and so on. So here's just an example of other achieved benefits of PLM that are possible, and how they impact either the income statement or balance sheet of a company, and what type of value do they bring to organizations. So how can TriStar kind of help companies on this journey? So TriStar, we are typically the company that will go into our customers and make sure their PLM system and their installations are working efficiently Even our competitors don't have the amount of breadth and expertise that our consultants can bring to make sure that customer is successful with their system and they're achieving some type of ROI or value from their investment. Typical ROIs are anywhere from 6 months to 2 years, depending on the company. And for example, if you take a look at this slide, TriStar has expertise in either new installations as well as migrations from existing systems. And we can also bring our expertise in configuring these systems for best practices and operational efficiencies, and even interactions with other systems, either ERP or CRM systems. So I just want to take some questions, if there's any, based on this overview. Just also to note, if you have any questions of the Windchill system itself, there are prior webinars that kind of go into the various areas like BOM management, manufacturing, and sourcing management, and those PLM specific functions that Windchill and TriStar can offer. So I'll stop for questions and see if anybody has any. If you don't have any more questions, then I want to thank you for attending this webinar, and hopefully we'll see you on our next Windchill webinar series. Okay, I don't see any questions in the queue, so hopefully you found this webinar informative. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact TriStar or your sales representative, and we'll be happy to help you. So I want to thank everyone for your attendance, and have a great day.